Here's something nobody wants to hear. You might be the reason your life isn't changing. Not your circumstances, not your past, not the economy or your parents or your ex. You. And I'm not saying that to be harsh. I'm saying it because it's the only thing that puts the power back in your hands. I'm going to show you 5 patterns that mess up your relationships, your career, and your self-respect. And you probably don't even realize you're doing them. These aren't obvious mistakes. They're subtle. They're socially acceptable. And that's exactly why they're so dangerous. If you recognize even one of these in yourself, don't panic. Awareness is the first step, and by the end of this video, you'll have a clear action plan to change it. Let's get into it. Before we dive in, I need to address something important. This video isn't about labeling people. It's not about high value versus low value. That entire framework is toxic. Human beings are complex. You're not a number on some imaginary social scoreboard. What we're actually talking about today are behaviors. Specific patterns that research shows damage relationships, hurt your credibility, and destroy self-respect over time. The good news, behaviors can change. And that's what makes this educational, not judgmental. Now here's why this matters. Most people have huge blind spots about how they're perceived. We're often the last to know when our behavior is pushing people away or limiting our opportunities. Think about it. When was the last time someone gave you honest feedback about how you come across? Probably never, or at least not recently. People are too polite, too conflict averse, or frankly, they just disappear from your life without telling you why. So what I'm giving you today is that honest mirror. Some of this might sting. That's normal. Growth usually does. But here's my promise. Everything I share will be backed by psychology, actionable, and focused on what you can actually control. Ready? Let's start with the most common pattern I see. Sign number 1. You seek validation more than you provide value. Here's what this looks like. You dominate conversations talking about yourself, but you're not sharing insights. You're proving you matter. You post constantly on social media, but rarely engage with others. You ask for favors, but don't offer help. You need reassurance, but don't give it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People can feel the difference between someone who's genuinely interested and someone who's just using them as a mirror. Psychologist Abraham Maslow talked about the hierarchy of needs. Belonging and esteem are fundamental human drives. But here's where people get it twisted. They think esteem comes from getting attention. It doesn't. It comes from providing value and being recognized for it. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." He understood that character is built through action, not validation. When you're constantly seeking approval, you're actually signaling insecurity. And ironically, that makes people less likely to give you the respect you're seeking. Here's how this shows up in modern life. In conversations, you steer everything back to your experiences instead of asking follow-up questions. You're not listening, you're waiting to talk. On social media, your content is all about you, your achievements, your appearance, your opinions, but there's no value for your audience. At work, you take credit quickly but avoid responsibility. You need praise for small tasks but don't acknowledge others' contributions. In relationships, you need constant reassurance that you're loved, but you don't create emotional safety for the other person. Starting tomorrow, implement the 80-20 rule in conversations. Listen 80% of the time, speak 20%. When you do speak, add value, share insights, ask deeper questions, connect ideas. On social media, before posting, ask, does this help, educate, or genuinely entertain someone else? If it's just ego stroking, save it to drafts. At work, make it a habit to acknowledge someone else's contribution before sharing your own ideas. Watch how collaboration improves. In relationships, give reassurance before asking for it. Notice what your partner needs emotionally and provide it without being asked. Now here's what this costs you. You have to let go of the dopamine hit from constant validation. It'll feel uncomfortable at first, like you're invisible. That discomfort is your ego protesting. Push through it. The payoff? Real respect instead of shallow attention, depth instead of breadth, quality relationships instead of transactional ones. Compare 2 people at a networking event. Person A circulates with business cards talking about their achievements, fishing for opportunities, checking their phone between conversations. Person B asks thoughtful questions, connects people who could help each other, follows up with value, and treats the janitor with the same respect as the CEO. Who do you think gets remembered? Who gets the actual opportunities? Person B understands that value attracts value. If you're ready to shift from validation seeking to value providing, drop this in the comments. I provide value first. Let's create some accountability. Sign number 2. You complain without taking action. Listen, venting occasionally is human. We all need to process frustration. But there's a massive difference between processing emotions and building an identity around being a victim of circumstances. If your default response to challenges is to complain to anyone who will listen, instead of researching solutions, you're training yourself and others to see you as helpless. Psychologist Martin Seligman researched this extensively in his work on learned helplessness. He found that people who repeatedly experience situations where they feel powerless start to believe they're powerless even when they're not. Here's the dangerous part. Complaining creates a negative feedback loop. It feels like you're doing something about the problem because you're talking about it, but neurologically, you're just reinforcing the problem narrative. Sun Tzu wrote in The Art of War, "Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win." He's talking about mental preparation, strategy before action. Complaining is going to war without a plan. It's just noise. This shows up everywhere. You hate your job, but you've sent 0 applications elsewhere. You just complain to coworkers, which tanks morale and marks you as negative. You're unhappy with your health, but you've researched 0 nutritionists, trainers, or programs. You just talk about how hard it is. Your relationship has issues, but you vent to friends instead of having direct constructive conversations with your partner. You're frustrated with your financial situation, but you haven't read a single book on personal finance or created a budget. New rule. Before you complain about something 3 times, you must take 1 concrete action towards solving it. Hate your job? Update your resume. Research competitors in your field. Schedule a conversation with your manager about growth opportunities. Or start building a side project. Unhappy with your health? Book a doctor's appointment. Hire a trainer for 1 session. Meal prep 1 day this week. Or commit to walking 20 minutes daily. Relationship struggling? Read 1 chapter of a relationship book. Suggest couples counseling. Or have 1 vulnerable conversation using I feel statements instead of accusations. Document these actions. Track them. Make problem solving a habit instead of complaining. Here's the trade-off. You lose the sympathy and bonding that comes from shared complaining. That feels like connection, but it's actually mutual reinforcement of powerlessness. You might lose some friends who only connected with you through negativity. That's okay. You're making space for people who value growth. The discomfort of taking action is temporary. The cost of chronic complaining is permanent stagnation. 2 people get laid off on the same day. Person A spends weeks telling everyone how unfair it was, how the company made a mistake, how the economy is broken. They post rants on LinkedIn. They replay the injustice mentally. Person B feels all those emotions too, but they process them privately or with a therapist. Publicly, they update their portfolio, reach out to their network professionally, learn a new relevant skill, and approach the job search strategically. 6 months later, Person A is still angry and unemployed. Person B has 2 job offers and leveraged them for a salary increase. Same situation, different responses, drastically different outcomes. If you're committed to becoming a problem solver instead of a chronic complainer, comment I take action. Let's build a community of people who own their outcomes. Sign number 3. You make everything about you. Someone shares good news, you immediately share your similar but better story. Someone shares a struggle, you don't ask questions. You launch into your version. Someone needs advice, you give it without understanding their actual situation. This isn't generosity, it's conversational narcissism, and it destroys relationships faster than almost anything else. Sociologist Charles Derber identified 2 types of conversational responses: support responses and shift responses. Support responses keep attention on the other person. Tell me more about that. How did that make you feel? Shift responses redirect attention to yourself. That reminds me of when You think that's bad, Research shows most people use shift responses without realizing it. They think they're bonding through shared experience. But what they're actually communicating is your experience is just a prompt for my story. Carl Jung explored this through his concept of the shadow self. The parts of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge. Many people don't want to admit they need to be the center of attention because it conflicts with their self-image as a good person. But awareness is everything. Once you see the pattern, you can change it. This pattern shows up constantly. Your friend shares they got promoted. Instead of celebrating them, you immediately talk about your career goals or past promotion. A colleague mentions they're struggling with anxiety. You don't ask what kind or what helps them. You just share your anxiety story. Your partner has a hard day. Instead of creating space for them to process, you talk about your hard day. On social media, someone posts about their accomplishment. Your comment is somehow about your related experience instead of genuine congratulations. In every case, you think you're connecting. They feel unseen. Practice the support response habit. When someone shares something, ask 3 follow-up questions before sharing any related personal experience. Make those questions specific and curious. Instead of "that reminds me of when try "what was the best part for you? What surprised you most? How are you feeling about what's next?" On social media, make 10 genuinely supportive comments before posting anything about yourself. In relationships, implement a daily check-in where you ask, "What's on your mind today?" And then just listen for 5 minutes without interjecting, fixing, or relating it to yourself. Notice how much more people open up when they feel truly heard. The cost here is ego death, which sounds dramatic, but that's what it feels like. You have to sit with the discomfort of not being the center of attention. You have to let someone else's story be complete without your addition. You might realize that some of your relationships were actually just stages where you performed, not genuine connections. That's painful, but necessary information. The payoff is that people start trusting you with deeper truths. They seek you out. They value your input when you do share because you've proven you're not just waiting for your turn to talk. 2 friends both hear about someone's recent breakup. Friend A says, "Oh my God, I've been there. When I went through my breakup, it was devastating. Let me tell you what happened. It was actually worse because..." They proceed to tell a 10-minute story about themselves. Friend B says, "That sounds really painful. Do you want to talk about it? Or would you rather be distracted? What do you need right now?" Who becomes the trusted confidant? Who gets called when life gets hard? Friend B understands that connection isn't about matching stories. It's about creating space. If you're committing to making conversations about genuine connection, not performance, comment, "I create space for others." Sign number 4. You don't keep your word. You commit to plans and cancel last minute. You promise to call back and forget. You say you'll send that thing and it slips your mind. You agree to deadlines and miss them without communication. Here's what you might not realize. Every time you break your word on something small, you're teaching people not to trust you on anything big. Trust is built through thousands of micro-interactions. Research by psychologist John Gottman on relationship longevity found that reliability in small moments is more predictive of relationship success than grand gestures. He calls them sliding door moments, small opportunities to turn towards someone or away. When you keep small promises, you're turning toward the relationship. When you break them casually, you're turning away. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Integrity isn't about what you say, it's about the alignment between your words and actions. The modern epidemic is overcommitment and underdelivery. We say yes to everything because we want to appear capable, generous, or interested. Then we flake because we're overwhelmed. But here's the brutal truth. People would rather you say no up front than say yes and disappoint them. This shows up everywhere. You say you'll make it to someone's event and cancel the day of. They plan around you being there. Food, seating, emotional support. Your cancellation disrupts more than you realize. You commit to a work deadline without checking your capacity. You miss it without warning. Forcing others to scramble. You tell someone you'll introduce them to a contact and forget completely. They follow up awkwardly. You schedule coffee with someone 3 times and reschedule each time. Eventually they stop trying. Each instance feels small to you, but cumulatively, you're building a reputation as unreliable. Implement these immediately. The 24-hour rule. When someone asks you to commit to something, say, "Let me check my calendar and get back to you within 24 hours. This prevents impulse overcommitment. The half rule. Only commit to half of what you think you can handle. You're probably overestimating your capacity. The communication rule. If you must cancel or will miss a deadline, communicate as soon as you know, not when it's convenient for you. The completion ritual. Before committing to anything new, complete or formally abandon one existing commitment. Use calendar reminders for everything you promise. Calls, emails, follow-ups, everything. Here's what this will cost you. You'll say no to things you wish you could do. You'll appear less available, less spontaneous, less fun. You might disappoint people in the short term by being honest about your limitations. Some people will push back when you stop overcommitting. They're used to getting a yes from you even if you don't follow through. But here's what you gain. When you do say yes, it means something. Your word becomes valuable. People know they can count on you. That's the foundation of respect. 2 people are asked to help with a community project. Person A enthusiastically says yes, commits to multiple tasks, posts about it on social media. But when deadlines come, they're too busy. They apologize but offer excuses. The project suffers. Person B says, "I can commit to one specific task with this timeline. I can't do more than that right now, but I'll deliver on what I promise." They complete it early and check if anything else is needed within their capacity. Who gets asked back? Who's trusted with important responsibilities? Person B understands that reputation is built through reliability, not enthusiasm. If you're ready to make your word mean something again, comment, "My word is my bond." Sign number 5. You avoid difficult conversations. Someone bothers you? You don't address it. You build resentment. Something needs to be said? You hope they'll figure it out. There's tension? You ignore it and pretend everything's fine. Here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. Conflict avoidance isn't kindness. It's cowardice disguised as peacekeeping, and it destroys relationships from the inside out. Psychologist Harriet Lerner wrote about this extensively in The Dance of Anger. She found that people avoid difficult conversations for 3 main reasons: fear of rejection, fear of conflict escalation, or fear of their own emotions. But here's what happens. Unexpressed feelings don't disappear. They ferment. Small irritations become major resentments. Misunderstandings become relationship-ending conflicts. Sun Tzu said, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." But he didn't mean avoiding conflict. He meant addressing issues strategically before they escalate into war. The modern misunderstanding is that nice people avoid confrontation. Actually, mature people address problems early, directly, and respectfully. They understand that temporary discomfort prevents permanent damage. This shows up in predictable ways. Your roommate does something that bothers you. Instead of mentioning it, you clean up after them passive-aggressively until you explode months later. Or just move out without explanation. A friend repeatedly cancels plans. You don't say it hurts your feelings. You just stop inviting them and let the friendship die. Your manager gives you tasks outside your role. You don't negotiate boundaries, you just feel exploited and resentful until you quit. Your partner has a habit that frustrates you. Instead of having the conversation, you criticize them about unrelated things or withdraw emotionally. In every case, you think you're avoiding drama. You're actually creating it, you've just delayed it. Learn to have difficult conversations skillfully. Use the XYZ formula. When you do X in situation Y, I feel Z. This is specific, not accusatory. Example: when you check your phone during our conversations, I feel like what I'm saying doesn't matter to you. Not, you're always on your phone and you don't care about anyone. The 24 to 48 hour rule. Address issues within 48 hours of noticing them. But wait 24 hours if you're emotionally activated. This prevents both festering resentment and reactive explosions. Assume positive intent. Start conversations with, "I don't think you meant this, but..." This lowers defensiveness. Have the conversation in person or via video call. Never via text for anything important. Practice with low-stakes situations. Start addressing small annoyances to build the skill before you need it for major conflicts. Here's what this will cost. Some people won't respond well to direct communication. They're used to passive-aggressive dynamics. They'll call you dramatic or confrontational. You'll have uncomfortable conversations that make your heart race. You might cry or get angry. That's normal. Some relationships won't survive honesty, but those relationships were already dying slowly. What you gain is infinitely more valuable. Relationships based on authenticity instead of pretense. Problems that get solved instead of buried. Respect instead of resentment. Two colleagues have the same problem. Their teammate keeps taking credit for their work. Colleague A complains to other coworkers, builds resentment, undermines the person passive-aggressively, and eventually either explodes in a meeting or quietly looks for another job. Colleague B requests a private conversation. "Hey, I want to talk about the project presentation. I noticed my research wasn't attributed to me. I don't think you meant to exclude me, but it's important to me that contributions are acknowledged. Can we establish how we'll handle attribution going forward? Who maintains their professional reputation? Who solves the actual problem? Who develops skills they'll use their entire career?" Colleague B understands that direct communication is a sign of maturity, not aggression. If you're ready to have the difficult conversations that build strong relationships, instead of avoiding them until they collapse, comment, "I speak my truth with respect." So let's take inventory. Out of these 5 patterns, seeking validation over providing value, complaining without action, making everything about you, breaking your word, and avoiding difficult conversations. How many did you recognize in yourself? Here's the thing. If you're still watching this video, it means you have enough self-awareness to see these patterns. That already puts you ahead of most people. Most people will watch this, recognize these behaviors in others, and miss them completely in themselves. That's the fundamental attribution error. We judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their actions. But you're different. You're here because you want to grow. Now I need you to be honest with yourself. Where are you right now? Are you someone who recognized 1 or 2 of these and you're ready to address them specifically? Or are you someone who saw yourself in most of these patterns and it's uncomfortable, but you're willing to sit with that discomfort? Here's what I know. Awareness without action is just entertainment. You can watch 100 self-improvement videos, read 1,000 books, listen to all the podcasts. But if you don't implement anything, you're just consuming content to feel productive without actually changing. So the question is, what are you going to do differently tomorrow? I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for one behavior to shift, one pattern to interrupt, one new habit to implement. Because here's the truth about personal growth. It's not a destination. It's not something you achieve and then you're done. It's a continuous practice of seeing yourself clearly, acknowledging what needs to change, and doing the uncomfortable work. The people who transform their lives aren't the ones with perfect discipline or superhuman willpower. They're the ones who recognize a pattern, feel the discomfort of change, and keep showing up anyway. That can be you. Actually, if you've made it this far in the video, that probably is you. So here's where you have a choice. You can close this video, feel temporarily motivated, and go back to exactly the same patterns by tomorrow. That's what most people do. No judgment. It's human nature. Or you can take one specific action in the next 24 hours that demonstrates you're serious about this. Here's what I suggest. First, pick one pattern from this video that you recognized most strongly in yourself. Just one. Write it down. Second, identify one specific situation where this pattern shows up. Be detailed, not in conversations, but in conversations with my parents when they ask about my life. Third, decide on one alternative behavior you'll implement the next time that situation occurs. Make it small and specific. Fourth, tell someone about it. Accountability changes everything. You can even comment below with your commitment. That creates public accountability and helps others. If you found this valuable, subscribe to this channel. I create educational content about psychology, communication, and personal development based on research, not pseudoscience. Hit the bell so you don't miss future videos where I break down specific strategies for implementing these changes. And look, here's the reality. What I can share in a 20-minute public video is limited to general principles. The algorithm actually suppresses truly detailed psychological content because it's not advertiser-friendly. If you want deeper breakdowns, like specific scripts for difficult conversations, detailed frameworks for building genuine confidence, or research-backed strategies for breaking lifelong patterns, that content lives behind the membership button. Most people won't click it. They'll consume free content forever without going deeper. And that's fine. Everyone's on their own timeline. But if you're serious about accelerating your growth, that's where the focused education happens. Either way, here's your final action. Choose who you want to be, not who you've been, not who others expect you to be, who you want to be. Then ask yourself, am I willing to do what that person would do? Because that's the only question that matters. Before you go, I want you to say this out loud, or at the very least comment it below. I see my patterns clearly. I take responsibility for my growth. I am willing to be uncomfortable to become better. That's not just a statement, it's a commitment to yourself. I'll see you in the next video.